So now we've come to the portion of our program where we're going to have our panelists have the opportunity to speak. And we are so very grateful that they've given of their time and energy in order to join us today. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask them to just kind of go down the table and introduce themselves. So Mark, would you like to start?
Hi everyone, I am Mark Jochem. I am coming from Madison, and in my day job I am the workforce development consultant and inclusive services consultant for the South Central Library System, and then I also volunteer at the Outreach LGBT Community Center's library. And so I'm very happy to be here today.
I'm Quinn Hause. I'm a licensed social worker, and more specifically, I'm a disability benefit specialist at the Aging and Disability Resource Center in Sauk County.
Hi everybody, I'm Roy. I'm with Habitat for Humanity Wisconsin River area. I'm the program manager. I do our aging in place, universal design, accessibility. I carry things.
I'm Joe Kimmell. I woodworker and erstwhile folk singer-songwriter up until a hemorrhagic stroke got me in April of 22. So I'm kind of new to this whole disabled business and still dealing with a lot of the frustrations, but enjoyed being a part of this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis Hruby. I basically live at home alone on a farm that I basically grew up on since we moved out there in '64. I'm not gainfully employed anymore. I rent the farm out and I do some trading, and I've been pretty successful doing that, so I'm kind of privileged. I get up when I want to, I guess, and deal with my disease. I'm trying hard to get strategies for independent living, and I had an idea that deals with therapy and MS, and I'm very disappointed with a lot of the resources that I've been provided, and I was thinking about writing a government grant to get some help to create an MS-oriented physical therapy. I've got some ideas for exercises and machines and adaptations that work for me that seem to really improve my life. So that's who I am.
Our first question is, if you were not affected by your current condition at birth, how has your life changed or not changed since being disabled?
I'll answer that. I was born without the MS. My mother had the affliction, and I watched her progress from about my age of 7 on. I basically knew no other life than a disabled, basically bedridden mother, and I grew up pretty independent. I worked, got an education, and I became afflicted 2006, 2007, and it was kind of by accident that I met my neurologist I was going to purchase a truck from another doctor, and he noticed my afflictions and introduced me to my present neurologist. That was in 2006, 2007. How has it changed? Well, I've noticed a gradual diminishment of physical abilities and activities, but I realized the importance of activity and exercise. I should have paid attention to the Montel Williams when he said that exercise was vitally important to him, and I saw him walk out on the stage at some point in some commercial or some television program he was in. So I was complacent the first 15 years of this affliction, and now I'm kind of struggling to try to get something back. And I feel incremental improvements when I do my exercise versus not exercising and feeling sorry for myself. So,
Thank you, Dennis.
well, you wanted to know.
Would anyone else like to speak to that question?
I can,
Thank you, Joe.
but slowly. Everything has changed. I was a fairly prolific woodworker, and in 2020, I was telling all my friends, "Oh, I think I got one more recording in me." I mean, in terms of a folk music album, and that kind of went by the wayside. I can't even hold a guitar. I'm not really trying to whine. I'm just stating the facts. My left side is affected, and I can't play guitar anymore at this rate. And we've just recently determined I'm probably never going to have the motor skills in my left hand to play guitar again, although I've got some plans. Nobody said anything about slide guitar, so that's kind of something I got up my sleeve. But really, I guess to generalize and not take up a whole lot of time, everything is a hassle now. We've made some good adaptations on our own. My wife Nancy is here; she can testify to that. But finding different ways of looking at things, I can't help but find different ways of looking at things. We went to the farmers market in Madison last weekend for the first time since I had my stroke, and we had friends with us, and they helped push me around and stuff. But I just noticed I'm still learning things every day about my disability. But it's not a whole lot of fun being in a big crowd of people on the state square at this eye level. There's times when it has its advantages, but I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to that point or that question? I'm going to follow it up with this. Can everyone hear me? Okay. What makes a good advocate for people who have disabilities? What makes a good advocate?
I would like to answer that. I would say someone who listens, who really listens as far as what the person with the disability is looking for. One of my things about that makes an advocate a good advocate to me is making sure that a person, if you're going to advocate, do it for the right reasons. So don't, if you're looking to look good, then it's probably not the right reason. Genuinely want to advocate for improved conditions for folks, but they also, in my mind, are willing to include folks with disabilities in the process of their advocacy. There are a few organizations out there, and I won't name names, but their governance structure, they don't have folks leading the charge or leading the process with the disability that they are trying to advocate for. And to me, that feels just incredibly wrong, and also that they're assuming the role of caretaker, not partner in crime.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak
I
to
would.
that?
If you don't mind, I absolutely agree. But one of the things that, as far as what makes a good advocate, and it's not just an advocate for people with disabilities or any advocate altogether, is patience. This is not a everybody in this room agrees and it's done thing. You have to be patient not only with all the variables that come with having a disability, but you have to be patient with those that you're trying to get to understand your perspective. It's not as simple as what I think is right. Sometimes it just takes some time for other people to, I got to wear them down to my way. No, I'm just kidding. But you have to be patient on both sides, because this is not and everything gets fixed right away. It takes time. I wish it didn't take as much time as it does, but we're all people, and we all have that stubbornness in them, and we think we're all right. It just takes a long time for you guys to get my way of view. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Thank you, Roy. Anyone else like to speak to that?
I have to agree with both Mark and Roy, but I think also advocacy really is about asking the individual what they would like you to help them with as well. Just because I've met someone else, who has cerebral palsy doesn't mean that they all need the same thing or want me to advocate in the same way for them.
Dennis, do you have anything to add?
I like the idea of asking the person in need what do they want, because a lot of advocates seem to give advice as to what they think the person can use and need. And well, I've been down that road. That's why I was complaining about physical therapy and deciding to try and do something different. I could go into that. Oh, sorry about that. I could go into that, but that's a whole nother topic.
Thank you, Dennis.
Could I make a comment? So I think one of the things as a family member for several people who are disabled and going through this with my friends, and you talk about advocacy, I find that there's a real fear for people to reach out. I think, so I'll speak to you because I've worked with your organization a little bit. I can't say enough about how willing people are to help. And I think as family members, we're hesitant to ask for help. It makes us feel funny and weird, and why can't we handle this ourselves? But I would just speak to the fact that it is life-changing if you can find the right people to help you. So I just, a testimony and a vote of confidence for some of the things that you people do, because I have a family member right now working with my sister who has dementia, and he does not want to ask for help, and he's finally doing it, and it has changed his world. So
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. How does the general public view you, and how does that differ from how you view yourself?
I have to say that's a tough question, because I'm not being the general public. So I can, there are assumptions that I can make that how folks view me, but they're probably way off, to be terribly honest. So I have cerebral palsy, the spastic diplegia variety, so it primarily affects my lower legs, and I use canes to walk. And I don't, the whole, how the public views me, maybe they think that I need extra help or some other things, or that I might not be able to do things, so I don't get invited. But that differs a little bit from how I view myself, because being born this way, having no other experience, no pre-disability viewpoint, all I can view myself is my current situation. There's no comparison, and I wonder if there's any, if either of you have other views.
Thank you for sharing, Mark.
Sure.
This is the line I've been saving up all week. And it's stolen from Game of Thrones. But my condition is a wonderful source of irony. So, Mark, I'm kind of jealous of you. And I found that a lot with the book, too. When she's talking about crawling around on her scabbed up skinny legs, I was like, well, what a blessing you had to have never known anything different, to have never had an ability before where you don't have that ability any longer. So I'm half kidding, Mark. I'm not jealous of you. I've got a good wife who takes good care of me, which is an amazingly important thing. But it's so.
If I may add to that, I guess when a thought sort of occurred to me a couple of weeks ago, when I'm by myself, I'm not disabled because I've already, through a lot of trial and error, I've figured out how to do things, and if it's, so I guess that is sort of how I view myself, is that when I'm alone in my apartment, just getting coffee to the table and jumping from chair to however I navigate, it just is how it is. It's that's my perception in my world, and so yeah, but.
Dennis?
A thought came back to me. I'm blessed with having friends who follow my interests. One friend of mine has a shop up by Mayville. He's an expert metal fabricator, and we're working on a couple of car projects. Hot rod cars, well, a big deal, but it's something I grew up with. And I call it my $50,000 hole I'm throwing money into. But he has the skills that could make that thing a six-figure car if I wanted to sell it. And the Ring brothers that sell these six-figure cars actually found it and searched it out on the internet. Anyway, the point is, he accepts me for who I am. I've got some engines on the stand that I'm building up there. I have other friends who encourage me to continue on doing what I want to do, but some of the things I want to do require their help physically, because I can't lift it, I can't move it, I can't do this or that. So I'm blessed with friends who, in their respective areas, support me and help me. Not everybody does the same thing. I have friends who help me. I'm changing the way I eat. I'm trying to lose a lot of weight. That makes it easier for me to stand. The physical exercise and the encouragement. So I continue to struggle with my exercise, and the reason it's a struggle, yesterday I went to the pool for the first time in about a month and a half, and I did my full routine, and I was exhausted, and I did not want to get out of bed this morning, but I knew this was a wonderful event, and so I just laid there accepting my condition and my position, and then made it here. And part of that ability comes from being around people who accept me, and they've educated me a little bit. You can't do what you used to do, but you could do what you can do now. And so
Thank you, Dennis. I would like to ask the panel, what are some of the best resources that you found or that you've used or that you could share with us? What are some of the best resources that are available?
I'll go.
Thank you, Joe.
For me, finding House of Wellness has been an amazing resource. The aquatic center there is phenomenal. Their machinery, their exercise machinery is up to date, if not better than you'll find in most hospital therapy units, physical therapy units. And Quinn, ADRC has been an amazing resource for me since we moved here 5 years ago. And just, I'm proud that that I had the forethought to get in contact with. It's about self-advocacy, and thinking to even get in touch with ADRC to begin with. I'm pretty proud of myself for and being open to that kind of care. So those are what I had in mind.
Thank you, Joe. Does someone else have some things to share?
I don't know. I think I'm a great resource. So I never went around and said what we do. I'm with Habitat for Humanity. I run the Aging in Place program, and this is what we do for very low income people, where a lot of places out there are going to have that ability to. A lot of people out there are going to have that ability to have friends, family, finances, insurance that can help them navigate through some of these more mundane, everyday things. That's where we come in. If they don't have those things backing them up, and my training was in mental health, so I approach every construction project we do from that. We were talking about in our group, trauma-informed care, with patient-centered first approaches. So I make the joke, and I'm going to do it again. Yes, I do make the 93-year-old grandmother get in the shower with me so we know where to put things, because that's what we have to do. Our assessments take 3-4 hours at our initial assessment because we walk through all those paces. So I think Habitat for Humanity's repair program is a great asset that I guarantee 95% of you didn't even know existed. Now, mind you, we're busy from sun up till sundown because that's how great the need is. So we don't, we also cover 5 counties, but that's another thing altogether. ADRC is pretty good too.
Well, at the Aging and Disability Resource Center, we do have a lot of different workers who specialize in certain things. I mean, we have elder benefit specialists, disability benefit specialists, our dementia care specialist, our information and assistance social workers, who are kind of the first line when people call. So again, I think that, a lot of us have specialties and know where to point you. If we don't have the answers or the resources, we can at least point you in the right direction of where to find those. So I do have to say ADRC is pretty great.
Yeah, I would suggest, so in my work life, workforce development consultant, so basically I help public libraries, help job seekers with resources and partnerships. And one of the best resources in my mind as far as accommodations go has been the Job Accommodation Network. It's askjan.com, or anyways, just Google it. But the Job Accommodation Network, it actually is a great resource for employers if they want to understand, okay, some of the basics of a disability, and also some of the adaptations that they can make to their place of business. And you know, if it, but of course, you know, they should absolutely begin with the employee themselves before going to that website to see what their thoughts are. But like if you're looking for an online resource, I find it awesome, pretty amazing.
Great, thank you. What are some of the best, most useful adaptations or innovations you have used, asked for, or built?
Well, I'll go. Can you hear me if I don't use the microphone? This little piece here, it comes apart with a clasp, and it's basically, I can put it around my above my knee. It can go up around my upper knee, or I can use it around my ankle, and I can give it a twist. Well, that'll help me pull my leg up in numerous situations around the house. In and out of the shower, at the pool, transitioning from the chair to the pool chair. This originated from an engineering class. My neurologist also is a teacher at the UW school, and he had an engineering class, and the freshman, I presented a problem. I needed a leg lifter, I called it, and they came up with this, and then there's another model that I have at home. Another adaptive thing is the van that I drove here in, using the scooter. But I would say, if you're going to make any recommendations to anyone you know, if they're going to start using one of these, they really need an exercise plan to get out there and keep those legs moving. I got to rely on this thing, and I got really lazy. And I got hand controls in my van, but the exercise is bringing my accelerator / brake foot back into play. And I notice the exercises that I do in the pool, simple exercises, they're not necessarily for strength, but they're to get the signals flowing again. And I noticed that this morning when I was feeling sorry for myself, thinking, God, I worked the heck out of myself and I'm so exhausted. But I was able to straighten my left leg and create a very comfortable, relaxed set of leg muscles instead of having a very severely hurting tension. The muscles work in agonist, antagonist, and if you can't tell the muscle to relax, then it's always fighting itself. Well, the exercise does that for me. It helps my legs relax. And I think they're getting a little stronger, and I live with the desire to actually stand again so I can get in and out through the passenger door of regular cars, because back again to that $50,000 hole I'm throwing money into. Or, well, you know that car I got that we drove up from Chicago, and I'd like to drive that again too.
Dennis and I are friends, and we've been friends for a long time, and we've taken some very interesting trips together. And can I tell a little bit of the story? Dennis had a dream about buying a
Porsche.
Yeah. Tell him what kind.
2004 Porsche Turbo. I bought it used, so I let some rich guy take the depreciation hit on it. But it's a pretty nice car. It's not a piece of junk. And we were driving up from Chicago in it, and then the mirror fell off. Weird. But I could still see it fluttering in the housing as it.
Was Sarah on this trip?
Anna and I were coming up.
She left Sarah at home.
Oh, it was pre-Sarah.
Oh,
pre my
pre-Sarah,
dog.
pre-Sarah.
Pre my dog. One of the things about that specific trip was that struck me in regards to Dennis and where he is right now in his journey is that we had to stop and get gas. And, you know, we had to stop in a part of town where we weren't sure that he was going to be safe. And we had to have this conversation about the fact that, you know, I needed to go out and fill up the gas tank because he couldn't get back into the car fast enough to fill it up. You know, so because he couldn't maneuver, he couldn't get in and out of it. He couldn't get from the pump back into the car. You know, and in the meantime, somebody could just grab his keys and run away with his car. You know, and how many of us, you know, who are we'll say able-bodied, would even have to think about something like that? You know, so it is a whole different perspective. You know, being friends with Dennis, being friends with Joe, you know, having different people in our lives, you know, it gives us that perspective. My mother, towards the end of her life, was in a wheelchair as a result of cancer, and it gives us that perspective. As far as adaptations, that was the question.
I'll go.
Thank you, Joe.
So I've never been one to think small. So I adapted a bridge. When I finished up my second round of therapy at the hospital, I was left with nothing really to do. And one thing I think anybody will tell you that's had a stroke and is trying to recover is that you miss one day of exercising that leg, you pay for it, by golly. You pay for it every day you're lazy. You pay for it tenfold, I think, in trying to get back into shape, which the good news here is you can do that if you're willing to work at it. And I'm not always willing to work at it very well. But at any rate, so I call it the dog park bridge. If you go to the big overflow parking lot at Circus World, there's a rock bridge that goes across there. And praise God that somebody had the foresight they put these angle iron braces along there, I presume to keep kids from jumping off. But they're just the perfect height for me to hang on to, and I can walk. I can't always make it to the end of the bridge, but we make it pretty close every time. And Nancy's able to spot me from behind with the wheelchair. And we meet a lot of people doing that too, and have nice conversations. So that's just an added benefit to that. But at any rate, those kind of simple things, I never would have thought about that for therapy until I'm in my condition now. But at any rate, that's all I've got on that one.
Thank you, Joe. Before you answer, Roy, I would ask that if anyone has questions, that you just raise up your hand if you've got a card, and then somebody will grab them from you so that we can take some questions from the audience as well. Go ahead, Roy.
All right. Seeing as how I do this all the time, and for those of you that know me, you're going to hear a speech that I've given 1,000 times. One of the most important adaptations in a home would be a bidet.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to
Amen.
talk about that.
I do.
Swear it's... You're in, aren't you?
Yeah.
There are so many benefits of adding a bidet to your toilet, even though you may be perfectly able to wipe your own butt.
And you'll pay more for the installation than you did for the bidet. more
Ain't
than
that the
likely.
truth?
Yep.
Well, call me, because I'll do it on my own time for free if you'll put a bidet in. So a bidet is the single. I will. Because it is the single, in my opinion, there are no studies I've tried. I've actually offered money to get a study done. It is the most important thing for health and sanitation as you're getting older or dealing with a disability. Here's the reason why. I will kill myself before I let my wife wipe my butt. I've been saying it for my whole life. But it's not true. I'm not going to do that. It's not a plea for help. So, but the reality is that bidet is going to give me independence It's going to give me a clean, which is normally can be a very dirty decision, and it's going to give me that privacy that I need or that I want in that situation. If you do not have a bidet in your home, spend the $45. We're not talking about a high dollar thing. We're not talking about putting in a $13,000 Japanese toilet that sings and blows at you and does a little dance, because they're out there and I want to try one day. But beyond that, okay, $45 from Amazon, you can put a bidet on your toilet in 15 minutes. It comes with the tool. Get a bidet, because it will change so much. As we're getting older, the ability to rotate backwards is dramatically diminished. If you're taking care of those things, a bidet is important. Second most important adaptation that I spend all my time talking people into, mind you, with bidet is number one. But the rest of the time I talk about things, because I deal with low-income people, telling them that they think they need a zero threshold entry to get into the shower. I got to tell you, they're fantastic. I would love to be able to afford one myself, but they're not cheap. No matter what that commercial on TV tells you, they're not cheap. I've done them myself. They're not easy either, unless you've got a whole crew of people and that's all they do. What we do is something that's called a tub cut. With your existing tub, we go in with a grinder and we cut a U-shaped section all the way out of the side of your tub. Yes, you will no longer be able to use it as a tub, because you don't want to buy the one with the doors or the slide-in thing, because they become tripping hazards. I promise, it's the thing. So, and it lowers that threshold from 16 inches is the average height of a tub. It lowers down to 3.5 inches. Getting your leg with your strap or with a transfer chair or whatever it is, a tub cut can do it very effectively. If you're going to do the process yourself, it can be done yourself, unless you have a metal tub and then you're grinding on that thing for 4.5 hours. I've done that. But it's about $350, $400 if you do it yourself. If you pay a professional, which I strongly recommend you do, it's about $750 to $1,000, depending on the type of tub you have. It allows you to be able to get in and out of the tub yourself. I set up for a client, it just happened to work out perfectly, the transfer bench, the toilet, the tub cut, everything, and I put the shower handle on the side instead of in front, and he can get out of his chair, take care of his business, use his bidet to clean his derriere, slide himself over on with the grab bar, slide himself to his transfer bench, get all the way in the shower, have the controls right there, have the wand, and it's all just, he calls it his assembly line of cleaning. So, because that's really what it is, but the tub cut is probably the second most important thing. Again, cheap, smart, fast, and easy. And if I didn't say it the first time, get a bidet.
Does anyone else have something to add about adaptations or innovations or?
Adaptations, innovations definitely are very individual, but I would have to agree accessible vehicles are just like number one in my personal experience, because transportation is just so essential, and it's a form of independence. If we could just, it would solve so many issues if we could work out public transportation issues as far as rural and urban. But in my experience, hand controls are definitely the most useful, but also simple things like carts and really hardy bags to carry things. I can't carry with two hands, a box, but if I were to take the contents out of the box, put them in a nice bag, that's way easier because it's just one one arm movement, and I can use my canes for the other arm. But I guess in my experience, and the bidet sounds really nice. So, you know,
It'll change your life. During COVID, when y'all had a problem with toilet paper, not a problem at my house.
My wife says I like ours too much.
I would just like to add one thing about accessibility. The bidet sounds great and the tub cuts. I went a slightly different direction with my shower. I spent about $4,500 rehabbing my bathroom, but my shower has a 4 by 5 foot square area, and it's referred to as the Schluter method. It's a method of construction where they put a 1/4-inch subfloor in, but there's no threshold at all. My entire bathroom is sealed. The Schluter method, it's at some of the big box stores. They seal up the floor to the walls, and then everything that I have in the shower area was tile, and the water runs to the drain. I can wash my scooter down because this thing, and I have about 4 scooters in rotation because I use them pretty hard and I beat the crap out of them and break them up, and I have to rehab them. But I can wash them, I can transfer into the shower. So having a threshold less shower, if you could go that way, it really, really helps me a lot. I just wanted to mention that. But the Schluter it's a method of materials and a construction method.
It is limited, though. There are certain limitations to being able to do that.
Yeah.
It is dependent on the age of. But there's a lot of variables on why that's. If you can do it, I'm all in. But there are certain situations where it won't work. Mobile home is number one, just so you know.
And did anyone else have anything more to add to that question? Okay. We do have a question. What is the opportunity for follow-up on some of the ideas brought up in this group? For example, how could we facilitate more access in this community, like changing curbs, having safe street crossings, etc.? Is there an opportunity to bring this to the city council? There is on the back of the sheet, there's a resource guide that may, add some assistance to where you could look for some of those answers. And certainly, I would always encourage you to reach out to your elected officials. I think that's a great idea. We have some great resources at the table, but certainly if there are specific things that you see that you'd like to have changed, reach out to your elected officials.
Or become one.
Yeah, because they listen. Does anyone else want to say anything more about the question, that we took from the audience?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This question comes up in a lot of different arenas, not just for disability advocacy. I honestly, I believe either becoming an elected official yourself and then standing up and talking about the things that are important, or forming yourself a small group. Get yourself together 5 like-minded people and start working the problem. As much as I would love to say that our elected officials can fix the problem, that hasn't been the case. But finding 5 like-minded people and finding something you can make a solution to. When we talk about doing putting up those lights that you were talking about, okay? If I can find 5 people and us 5 people decide that this is an important one thing that we can do, then we start working the problem. Getting, the zoning ordinance passed. finding the funding, taking it to the city council and say, this is going to cost you nothing because I found funding from other places. I need you to sign the paper to get it done. Fixing the problem ourselves instead of relying on others is going to be the smartest way. And I always use the number of 5. 5 is a great number. You know why 5 is a great number? Because 4 of us are going to be lazy. We need one of you to do it. So, no, just kidding. It holds each other accountable. And you can work off of each other and build momentum off of what somebody else said. Small groups are the way that you change the world. It's not the big groups, you know. Anyway.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add to that answer? I'm going to ask one. We've got time for another question. What do you find the most vexing about living with a disability, or working within that area? Within your area of expertise, what do you find the most vexing?
For me, everything takes 3 to 5 times longer. Takes longer to get up in the morning. Takes longer to get to bed. Takes longer to cook. It takes longer to do this. I don't have enough hours in a day sometimes to do basically nothing because every little nothing takes so much longer to do. That's my complaint. But I'm lucky enough to live on my own time frame and not have to struggle with other people's time constraints.
I would say the most vexing issue is the lack of visibility and representation for folks with disabilities. Growing up, I have to say I knew very few, if any, representations in media or books or people with disabilities that I could look to for either some kind of influence or just a motivation or whatever, some kind of connection. And I think that it also is a vexing issue for folks who don't have disabilities, because if you don't have any exposure to people with differences, then you really are missing out on different ways of doing things and perspectives. Growing in school, being placed in classrooms that didn't fully, I was placed in special, what they would call special ed, and I disagreed with that placement because I felt as though I could learn with the regular students in the mainstream classrooms. And I grew up with a lot of anger about that. And I also think that, wouldn't it have been helpful for those students to have been exposed to people like me with disabilities? And so that's what I feel is the most vexing.
I'd just like to say, I work for county government, and they always talk about government is siloed, and I think that's true. The Aging and Disability Resource Center knows what we know, but there are so many other programs and resources out there that we don't know, and there's kind of a lack of collaboration at times. And I think that's unfortunate because I think the more that you know, the more you can help people. So that's one of the issues with working for county government, is there are those silos.
Thank you, Quinn. Roy, did you have something to add in
No,
regards
I'm
to
good.
vexing?
I have a lot that's vexing, but
Joe?
I suppose one of the things that maybe it's obvious today, I have some, but it's not a stroke is a little bit different than a physical disability. I am keenly aware that I do a Mitch McConnell every once in a while, and I just freeze up. You know, I've noticed that a couple of times this morning, where the thought just kind of ends or stops, and that's the really frustrating part for me.
Thank you. Is there anything as panelists that you would like to share with the audience that you've thought that you would like to share? You know, something that's important to you that you'd like to express to the audience, to our community members?
I guess I would just say that we're all in this together. It's good to recognize the strengths of everybody, and some of the strengths might come in unusual packages. I've had to accept that fact too. I've really been taken aback a few times with some of the realizations that I've seen, or some of the people I've met, some of the interactions I've had. That's what I've got on that.
Thank you, Dennis.
I guess I'd add one last thing, is that kind of like the rules we set up in our breakout groups, one of the rules was not expecting closure. And if you've got an ongoing situation like I've got, or like anybody with disabilities has, it's never, nothing's ever resolved. You can only improve. I don't expect closure. I expect constant challenge, and I guess that's okay. It's not all a bad thing. But like I said, it is a wonderful source of irony.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else?
I would say if you don't have someone in your life with a disability, or get to know someone with a disability, perhaps maybe ask yourself why, but also make the effort to get to know what it's like through that lens with a disability. And if you do know someone and you have a question, you know, sort of, I don't know, follow their lead as to what is the right course of action to do to either help or just let them be who they are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Well, that concludes our event. Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate your willingness to come into a safe space and have this discussion. I think it makes our community a better place. So thank you for spending these hours with us on a Saturday. Thank you.